This is John Lee Dumas of Entrepreneur on Fire, and you are listening to Waiting on Superheroes podcast with your host, the world-changing ninja, Dario Inspires.
What's up, heroes, and welcome to another episode of the Waiting on Superheroes podcast. I am your host, Dario Inspires. Today's episode is all about not being afraid to take risks in the midst of discovering your life's purpose with my guest, Allison Vesterfelt. Now, before we go any further, I want you to know that your support is needed and it keeps this show going. So please stop by iTunes, subscribe, leave us a fresh review, and thank you in advance. Thought leader, writer, dreamer, and risk taker, Allison is the author of the life-changing book, Packing Light: Thoughts on Living Life with Less Baggage. The book is a memoir-style first-person narrative about how Allison quit her first-time job, moved out of her apartment, sold all her things, and traveled across the country to visit all 50 states and achieve her dream of writing a book. Allison is passionate about helping others discover their own answers to the questions that ultimately inspired her trip. And these are the questions. What do you really want out of life, and what is getting in your way? Allison is a native of Portland, Oregon, and lives in Nashville, Tennessee with her husband, Daryl. Heroes, I'm extremely excited to introduce Allison Vesterfelt. Allison, are you ready to inspire?
I'm so ready. Yes. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Our pleasure, Allison. Now, before we get any further, we told our listeners just a little overview about you. So take a minute, tell us about you personally, then give us an overview about what you do.
Yeah. Well, like you said, I live in Nashville with my husband, and we've been here about 8 months now. And the reason that we moved here is because we were both kind of working in the blogging and publishing world, and Nashville is just a really great spot for that. It's there's tons of creative people in the city. It's not just, I know Nashville is kind of known for music, but it's not really just music. There are lots of authors here, tons of opportunities for publishing, tons of opportunities to connect with other people who are blogging and who are not just blogging, but interested in, getting involved in their communities and in enacting some kind of change in their communities. So, anyways, we've just really loved being in Nashville. My husband works for Donald Miller. He's the marketing director for Don's company called Storyline. And I am a full-time writer, so I spend most of my days at home. I travel fairly often, probably 2 weeks out of every month. I'm on the road speaking at different, churches or venues. But then when I'm not on the road, I'm at home and sitting in my apartment and working on different writing projects and connecting with other writers and stuff like that. It's really, really fun. This has been my dream for a long time, so I feel really grateful.
Awesome, Allison. Now, before we go any further, because I know you've got a great story to tell, the life-changing event that happened at the wedding, so we're going to stop real quick and we're just going to deal with something, because we always like to start our show off with a life quote or life verse. So give us a quote or a verse that has inspired you in the past, and give us an example of how you've applied it along your journey.
Okay. My absolute favorite quote is, it's funny because I've always said that this was from John Eldredge, and then I recently saw it attributed to someone else somewhere else. So I am confused now about who said it, but it doesn't matter because the quote is so powerful. It goes, don't ask yourself what this world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive and do that, because what this world needs are people who have come alive. And that has been so influential for me, that idea, because I think I've spent a lot of years asking myself, what does this world need? And that question came in lots of different forms in my life, but the basic gist of it was, what would make my parents happy? What would help me to fit in with my group of friends? What is going to make me the most money? What's going to make me look the best? What's like the most humanitarian thing I could do? And all of those roads ended in disappointment and frustration, and really ultimately me not doing as much quote unquote good as I wanted to do in the world. Because there just wasn't a synergy between my skill set, my gifts, my passions, and what I was doing. And so, like, for example, I always really wanted to make an impact in my community. So I started volunteering for all these organizations post-college. I started volunteering for various organizations in the Portland area. And I would work with, second language learners, because that was my that was my training, was to work with English, people who are learning English as a second language. And so I would work with second language learners to help them, achieve their GEDs or do various things. And there were moments of that work that was rewarding. But for the most part, I would say every time that I had to go, I would dread going. And then I would feel guilty and badly about myself because I would think, I'm so selfish. All I ever want to do is stuff for myself. And so there was this tension there. Well, once I realized that my passion was really writing, now when I get to work with other writers, I don't ever dread working with other writers. I give a lot of my time to, all kinds of different things that have to do with writing and communicating this message that has become so powerful for me. And anytime I have an opportunity to do that, it feels like I'm cheating the system. If I get paid at all, I feel like I'm cheating, like I'm getting paid to do something that I really love to do. Every day I wake up, I get to sit in my apartment and do something that really makes me come alive. I get excited to get out of bed in the morning, and the fact that I get paid just feels like a bonus. And so that for me has been a powerful paradigm shift, that I don't have to force myself. In order to live a selfless life, I don't have to force myself to do things that I don't really like to do. I can actually find the things I love to do and learn to serve in those areas, in those ways. And then there's so much more of a synergy there. I end up giving more than I was giving in the past. Others around me end up receiving more, and everybody's happier.
Allison, that was a wonderful quote, and that was a wonderful way to apply it within your life and your journey. Now, according to time management expert Youre Vanderkam, she says this: mornings hold the key to taking control of our schedules. If we use them wisely, we can build habits that will allow us to lead more happier and more productive lives. Allison, give us a run through of what your morning routines look like.
Okay, I love that quote. I hadn't heard it before, but I am an early morning person. So I typically wake up at 5 in the morning, and first thing I do is write. And the reason I do that is because I found that between the hours of 5 and 7 a.m., I get my most productive writing done. So when I was working on the manuscript for my book, Packing Light, I started this practice, and it was so effective for me that I've done it ever since. But I'll wake up at 5, usually start making coffee, and then sit down, and I set 2 timers for myself. The first one, they're each for an hour, but I sit down in my chair. First timer goes for a full hour, and I don't get up from my chair until that timer goes off. So I sit and just write whatever it is that I'm working on. I write. Even if I get stuck and can't come up with an idea, I stay seated in my chair. I don't get up. I don't distract myself. I don't do anything to get through that first hour. And then when the timer goes off, I can get up and use the bathroom or grab coffee or whatever I need to do. And then I set the timer again for another hour and do it from 6 to 7. And those 2 hours are the most productive writing hours of my whole day. So there are some days when I'll write from 5 to 7 in the morning, and then I don't do any other writing throughout the rest of the day because there are always other things to do. There's, emails to respond to, or different projects I'm working on, or meetings that I need to go to. There are some mornings I'll write from 5 to 10, but more often than not, it's very rare now that I will write in the later afternoons because I just don't get nearly as much done. So from about 5 to 10, I write most mornings, always 5 to 7, but I would say 90% of the time it's 5 to 10 a.m. And then I tend to take a break and go work out, make myself breakfast, whatever. And then the rest of the to-do things, the smaller to-do things, tend to fall toward the end of the day. And some days I work until 5, other days I stop working at 2 or 3. It depends on the day.
Thanks for sharing that, Allison. Now, do you write until you're tired, or do you have a certain amount of words, or is there a length to it?
I don't have a certain amount of words because I find some mornings I will write 1,000 words and some mornings I'll write 5,000. It really just depends on the morning. But I do give myself that 2-hour time limit for that reason, because I think there are some times when my first hour will be really unproductive, but if I push through to that second hour, I can get, 3,000 words written. So it just depends on the morning. It's weird. It's like I was a distance runner for a little while, for a very short period of my life, a couple of years, and it reminds me of running because there are some mornings when you can go out on a run and it's like you're in the flow, your body is just working for you and everything feels effortless, and you run, 6 miles and it feels like nothing. And then there are other times when you struggle through even a mile. And I think that what I learned from distance running carries into writing, and I would say, I learn it over and over again in writing that would apply to any area of life, is that the important thing is that you just get up and you put your shoes on, or you sit next to your computer and you just do it. You just show up to the page, or you just show up to the pavement, and you just, at least you do it. At least I woke up and I went on a run. At least I woke up and I spent my 2 hours writing. And so I don't worry too much about the outcome. If it's 1,000 words, that's great. If it's 5,000, that's even better. But that just feels like a bonus.
Awesome, Allison. Now we've come to one of my most favorite parts of the show, and this is where we talk about the valleys, the obstacles, and failures. Anyone who desires to be a world changer, leader, and catalyst will encounter temporary seasons of being stuck in a valley, tackling seemingly immovable obstacles, and the big F word, failure. Allison, take us to that time and tell us how you overcame and the lessons you've learned.
Oh, man. Well, I would say probably the biggest turning point moment of failure for me, and it's silly now, even when I describe it, it doesn't seem nearly as dramatic as it felt in the moment. But I'll talk a little bit about my story in a little bit. But basically, what I did, like you said at the beginning of the show, was sold all of my stuff, packed whatever I could fit into my car, and with a friend spent a year driving around the country, visiting all 50 states. And the purpose of that trip was both for her. She was a musician, so she was going to play shows and kind of try to launch her career as a musician. And I really wanted to be an author, so I was going to journal and document the events of our trip so that I could eventually turn it into a book. So we spend all that time out on the road, and when we come back home, I remember driving back into our hometown of Portland, Oregon, and realizing that after all that time of being out on the road, I had written hundreds of blog posts, but I hadn't written a book. And I didn't have any idea. I wasn't any closer to knowing how to write a book. I didn't have any idea how to publish a book. I didn't know of any publishers. I hadn't met anyone. There had been no magical moment where, I had connected with a publisher who even wanted to see my manuscript. I had heard from someone that you needed to write a proposal, but I didn't even know what that looked like. So it was this moment of realizing I gave up everything to go on this trip so that I could write a book. And now I have nothing. I have no furniture. I have no car. I have no job. All my friends have kind of moved on with their life. Several people had gotten married while we were gone, or started relationships, or just, moved on with things. And the one thing I had wanted to do, I still had no idea how I was going to do. So it was just this thinking moment of realization for me that things weren't going to just automatically fall into place, but I was really going to have to fight for this thing if I wanted it. So I spent it took me a few weeks. I was really depressed for a couple of weeks, probably 3 weeks. And then after that, I just decided, I had a moment where I just realized if this is going to happen, it's not going to be accidental. It's going to be because I take every opportunity that comes across my path, that I forge new opportunities where there weren't opportunities before. I'm going to have to take control of my circumstances. So I just started doing everything I knew how to do. It was like, if anyone would give me advice, I would take it. I would try anything. I was willing to try literally anything. So I just started doing stuff. And slowly but surely, it felt so painful at the time because I would try things and they wouldn't work. I would contact people and they wouldn't contact me back. I would send out, I wrote a proposal and started sending it out cold to publishers, which doesn't work. So I was getting, either no response or total rejection from people.
Wow.
And there was about 6 months of that before I finally, actually, this is another whole long story, but I met my husband, who wasn't my husband at the time, obviously. We met for the first time, and he said, hey, I have some connections in the publishing industry, and I can help you if you want help.
That's
and
a
that
great pickup line, by the way.
Yeah, I know, really. I was like, that's the perfect thing to say to me. So anyway, he ended up helping me to get the book contract with my publisher. But it took, from the time I quit my job to the time I got the book contract was 2.5 years. So it was a long time of waiting and hoping and praying, and, it was a long time.
2.5 years. Now, do you remember you maybe You may have forgotten this, but do you remember how many publishers rejected you by any chance?
I think it was 3 or 4. I think it was 4. Yeah, it was 4. And then, there were 3 on my own, and then the first publisher that my husband pitched to, they were the first ones who responded to me and said, "Here's why we can't publish your book." Boom, boom, boom. They gave me a bullet point list.
Now,
And
were they right?
It was really hard for me to hear that feedback, but really good, because it helped me to refine the project. And when I edited the project and we sent it to the next publisher, they picked it up immediately. Wow. So that's another thing I would say too, is it's so hard to receive criticism, but if you can receive criticism and have have a good filter for it, and by that I mean some criticism is not helpful for you. Some people are going to try to change you. They're going to try to make you into something you're not, especially when it comes to creative projects. But if you can filter the criticism and be able to disconnect yourself from it emotionally and say, this is good criticism, this is going to help me move in a positive direction, this I don't need to pay attention to, it really can help you creatively. It can help you to make whatever it is you're working on a better project. It can help to make you a better and more and stronger person. And so I think one of the most undervalued and most important things we can do is to get good at receiving criticism.
Wow. Allison, thanks for sharing that. Criticism is important. Remove yourself emotionally and take the good and readjust and re-strategize. Thanks for sharing that. Now, Allison, let's get into the meat of your story, which birthed this book. You see, in the midst of my search for purpose, a wise man once told me, your greatest frustration is something that you were put here to solve. Tell us, what was your greatest frustration? Then take us back to that moment and share with us the steps you took to develop the inspiring solutions, which we read in your book, Packing Light.
Yeah, I would say my greatest frustration was that it just felt like, as I was going on with my life, it felt like there has to be more to life than this. This can't be all there is. I had this nagging feeling or sense or question inside of me that just kept coming up, and I kept feeling like this can't be it. This can't be all there is to life. And basically, let me back up just a little bit. I had gotten my undergraduate degree in English and then gone to grad school and gotten a grad degree in education so that I could teach. And I had finished my graduate degree and had been out of school for about 2 years and had just gotten my first sort of real full-time job as a teacher. And I was really excited about the job because I felt like this is the moment that I've been waiting for all of these years that I've been in school, right? Like all through your later years in high school and while you're in college, and then as you're in grad school, you're trying to decide what you want to do with your life and what degrees do I need to get and what do I need to sacrifice now so that I can have the life I want later. And you're working really hard and you're constantly thinking as you're writing papers that feel pointless to you and you're going through finals and everything, you're thinking, this is all okay because soon I'm going to be able to start my real life. Soon I'm going to get my degree and I'm going to be able to move on and have my life begin. And so what I thought is that this job was going to be that moment. It was going to be the moment when my real life would start. And yet I started the job, and about 3 months into the job, I realized that if this was the real life I had been waiting all this time for and putting off, making all these sacrifices for, paying all this money for, doing all this hard work for, that it wasn't what I expected. And if this is what I had worked that hard for, it wasn't worth it.
Wow.
Because I was really miserable. I mean, I wasn't, the job was fine. I would wake up every day and drive to work and just kind of talk myself through it in the car ride on the way there and tell myself, you're going to be fine. It's okay. You'll get through it. Just a day, But I thought, if I had to talk myself through every day of my job for the next 20 to 30 years of my life, that will be miserable. So each day in and of itself wasn't that bad, but it just felt empty. I felt really bored. I felt like it wasn't as fulfilling as I hoped it would be. So I just started asking myself the question, am I doing something wrong, or is this just it? Is this just the adult life and I just need to get used to it and suck it up and keep doing what I'm doing? Well, during that season, I was at a wedding and of a really close friend of mine, and at the reception of the wedding, I was talking with another friend, and she said, I was telling her how I'd been feeling, and she listened really carefully, and then at the end of everything, she asked me a question that shocked me. No one had ever asked me anything like this before. She said, what would you do if you could just do whatever you wanted? Like, if you woke up tomorrow and I just told you, don't worry about making money, don't worry about anything, just do whatever you feel like doing, what would you do? And I don't think anyone had ever really given me the freedom to answer a question like that before. But I said, you know what I would do? I would write books. I've always wanted to write books since the time I was a little girl. And even more than that, I've always wanted to travel across the country and write a book about my travels. And it was like the minute that those words came out of my mouth, I realized, oh my goodness, the thing I really want to do with my life is so different from the life I'm living right now that no wonder I'm miserable. No wonder I'm miserable. And I had this tension because I felt like, well, you can't just do whatever you want with your life, right? You have to think about what's good for other people too. It would be really selfish for me to just do whatever I feel like doing. And so I dialogued about that with her, and she was asking me what would be the things getting in your way. And I said, well, I have to think about what my parents would want for me, and I have to think about how to pay my bills, and I have grad school loans and this and that. And we went through the whole list of reasons why I thought this could never work. And the more I talked about it, the more I realized I was really living my life for other people, for things outside of myself, much more than I was living my life for me, which in the end I was just coming to the understanding that it doesn't make you a selfless person to live your life to impress other people or to live your life to satisfy other people. That's not what makes you selfless. And it's a hard paradigm shift to describe, but there really was this moment where I realized I was going to start living my life out of my passions. And when I did that, when I stepped into my passions and when I began to really cultivate those and to throw myself into my life and to become a participator in my life, the people around me automatically benefited. I automatically had more to give.
Wow.
I automatically had a greater vitality. Even just my presence in being in a room was more beneficial than me showing up to something that I didn't really want to do. My heart wasn't in it. My passion wasn't there. So it's a hard shift to describe, because I do think there are still moments in my life now where I have to remind myself. I think we have selfish streaks in us, and I have to remind myself that this is not all about me. But there's something incredibly humbling about stepping into your passions and living out your passions fully.
Absolutely.
There's something so humbling about that. And I think what happens is when we do that, when we're willing to step into the life that we've always wanted, and to really put our heart on the line, not just our actions, but our real heart on the line, that the selfishness starts to be stripped away, because we're laid bare and vulnerable, in front of the people around us. And so I sold everything with this friend who I had the conversation with. We sold everything we owned, packed whatever was left of our life into a car, and spent the next year of our lives traveling to all 50 states. She played shows. I documented our journey, which eventually turned into the book called Packing Light. And that experience was so transforming, so humbling, so, awful and beautiful in so many ways. It completely changed my whole life. I wouldn't be where I am or doing what I'm doing today if it weren't for that.
Wow. What an amazing journey. Now, you said something. You said you asked yourself at that moment, is this just it? Is this the story of my life? And I must commend you, because the majority, the 95, maybe 99% would have said, yeah, this is life. This is what I'm supposed to do. I would just live in mediocrity. I would just live a life of meaningless. This is what everybody else is doing. So I commend you for stepping outside of that. But Allison, I have a question. So you sold everything. You said, I'm going to follow my passion. I'm going to follow my God-given task. Everything is gone now. And now you're going to hit the road with your friend. The question I have for you is this. What was the response of your family and friends?
Well, this is crazy. This is one thing a story I love to tell, because I was so worried about how they were going to respond. I thought people were going to freak out. I thought they were going to tell me I was crazy. I was bracing myself for my parents to laugh at me or to get angry at me and tell me they were so mad that they had supported me through college and grad school, and now I was choosing to throw away my career. And I mean, I had this whole picture in my head of how this was going to go down. And I literally sat down with my parents and said, here's what I want to do. I really feel like this is the path that I want to take. This is important to me for these reasons, kind of laid out the whole plan for them. And they said, okay, wow, that's awesome. That sounds like you. That sounds like something you would love to do. And we want to support you in whatever ways we can. And they had lots of questions like, where are you going to stay? And, what's your plan for this and that? And how are you going to make money? And lots of parental questions. But ultimately, they were like, you're 25, or I think I was 26 at the time, actually. You're 26. You get to make your own choices. We love you. We support you. We want to push you out in whatever way we can, which, I don't know that every single parent would react like that. I think that I have extraordinary parents. But
Absolutely.
the thing I think that is amazing about it is that I thought their reaction was going to be so extreme to one way, and then their reaction was so extreme to the other direction. And I think so often we do this, that we over-dramatize in our minds how people are going to respond to us being ourselves. And the truth is, I wasn't hiding anything from my parents by pretending that I wanted to live this really safe, 9-to-5 kind of life every day. When I told them this is what I want to do, what they said was, oh, that sounds like you. So it's funny. I think sometimes we think we're hiding behind this facade, and we're really not hiding from other people nearly as much as we're hiding from ourselves. And, I had the same experience with my friends. When I shared with my friends what I was going to do, I was worried that they were going to have all kinds of objections. And for the most part, 90% of them were super supportive. They all kind of wanted to come with me and were like, I wish I could do something like that. You're so brave, And then I had 10% of my friends seem kind of cautious or, they had concerns. But I think even those friends that was their way of caring for me and loving me, and had some really good dialogue with people about, what makes a life meaningful. And so I think there was a good tension in that, and I think I'm so thankful for those people and how they shared honestly with me, and that they were willing to ask the hard questions and all of that stuff. So, but I would say the main lesson that I learned from that just is not to project onto people what you think their response is going to be to you breaking free until it's actually their response, because we make obstacles so much bigger than they need to be before we actually get there. And then we actually get there and we realize we made a mountain out of a molehill. And
amazing, Allison. Changing the response of others by you living out your passion, by living out your dream. Now, this is the part, Allison, where you get to speak directly to our listeners. Now, I want you to speak to the Allison out there listening to this right now, or the Alex. Now, they've went to school, they've graduated college, and they had hopes of getting this dream job. They're either working in their field or working outside of their field, but it doesn't feel right. There's a lawyer, perhaps an engineer, an architect in a medical field, and Allison or Alex out there sitting here like, you know what, that's where I'm at right now. I've done all the right things, but I feel so unfulfilled. I'm tired of working this 9-to-5. What advice would you have for them?
Yeah, I would say don't ignore that feeling that's in you. You keep pushing it down because you worry about where it's going to take you, and don't ignore it. It's there for a reason. It's speaking something to you about yourself. It's so important. So that's the very first thing, is don't ignore that feeling. Stop pushing it away. Listen to what it's telling you. Be willing to ask yourself the question, what is it that I really want? That question will guide you. It won't always be the solution to your problems, but it will guide you. If you ask yourself, what would I do if I could do whatever I wanted? If I woke up tomorrow and someone paid me a hefty salary to do whatever I wanted to do, what would I do? And if you allow yourself the freedom to answer that question, aside from all the restrictions, don't think about what your parents want you to do. Don't think about what all your friends are doing. Don't think about what's going to make you the most money. Don't think about, paying off your school loans, whatever it is that's on your plate, whatever's keeping you where you are. Don't think about those things. Just give yourself permission to just answer, even if it's hypothetical, answer that question. What do I want? What would I do if I could do whatever I wanted? And that question will guide you is connected to your inner spirit, to the passions that have been built inside of you, you know, to the experiences that have made you who you are and that have brought you to this point. And if you can listen to that inner arrow or inner guidance, it will guide you to something really beautiful. And it can be intimidating because when you answer that question, whatever the answer is to that question will inevitably feel impossible. Because I think that our inner spirit guides us to do something that is bigger than us, and that inevitably feels impossible. So don't let yourself be intimidated by that, the impossibility of it. I would say start small. One of the things that my friend who I went on the road trip with, that she had us do in the beginning of our journey was, before we even left on the trip, as we started talking about what this would look like, she said, let's make a list of things that we would have to do, that we'd have to accomplish within the next month in order to go on this trip, and just make a list of them, and then kind of keep it in your back pocket or keep it in your purse or keep it in your wallet or wherever works for you, and keep those things on your mind and make it your task within the next 4 weeks to complete just those things on your list. They're small things. So for me, it was something like call the loan company and see if I could defer my grad school loans, talk to my parents about the possibility of going on the trip, you know, smaller tasks like that. And I would keep those tasks with me, and as I would accomplish them, you know, I call the loan company, I find out all I have to do is fill out a piece of paper, and my loans are deferred. There's such a sense of confidence that comes with that, because you realize that although the task itself might seem way too big for you, that these small steps you can take toward the task are not too big for you, and it gives you a sense of momentum and confidence toward this thing that you want to achieve. And the path to the end, it will change along the way. It will morph into something that you didn't expect, and that's okay. Give it permission to do that. That's why answering that question, listening to the inner arrow inside of you, or that inner guidance, is just the guidance towards something, but the vision will clarify as you walk toward it. It's kind of blurry off in the distance, or as my friend Bob likes to say, it's like a Polaroid picture. It's slowly coming to light. So just give it permission to slowly come to light. You don't have to have it all figured out right now. But make that list, put a few things on it that you'll be able to accomplish in the next couple of weeks, and just start checking those things off.
Awesome, Allison. You see, it's easy to give words, but what I love about what you just did is the fact that it was practical. There was a way, there's a method. You gave them a list, write it down, and see if it's possible. And it absolutely is. So, Allison, we thank you for that. Now, we've enjoyed your journey. We've enjoyed your triumph and your frustration and the solutions you've come up with. So, Allison, let's end by now you telling us, who is your superhero? Tell us about a person who has made a major impact in your life and why you consider that person a hero.
I would say my husband really has changed the way that I look at the world in such a positive way. And he is, the thing that drew me to him in the very beginning was his sense of confidence. That when I met him, I remember thinking, this guy truly believes he could accomplish anything. And by default, I don't know if that's the right word, but because he believes he can accomplish anything, he also believes other people can accomplish anything.
Wow.
So when you meet him, automatically he'll start asking you, what do you dream about? What do you care about? What matters to you? What are you passionate about? And it's like you can see the wheels in his mind spinning to try to help you get to where you want to go. And so just watching him live his life like that, where he really believes anything is possible, has changed the way I see the world. In the beginning of my story, the character of Allison at the beginning of Packing Light is incredibly afraid. Sometimes when I read back now, I'm sort of annoyed with her because she's so afraid. She's so timid. She's so cautious. She's so careful. She's so worried. She has so much anxiety about everything in her life that she's not even willing to try anything. She's not willing to step out and do anything different. And slowly, of course, she changes over the course of the story. I changed over the course of the story. And life forces you to change in that way. As you step out, you learn to become more courageous. But at the time, I was so scared. And so watching my husband really approach life without fear and to approach failure without fear, to him, he's like, failure is an education. Failure is not a failure. Failure is an education. And so he approaches life without fear and really just has this sense of confidence that he can do whatever it is he sets out to do. It has changed the way that I see myself. It's changed the way I see the world. And I think I've accomplished more and made more of a difference because of watching his example. So I'm really thankful for that.
Awesome. Behind every great woman, there's a great man. Kudos to your husband. Kudos to your husband for, encouraging you and inspiring and pushing you to get this book out, which is helping a lot of people out here, including myself. I read your book halfway through it, actually, and it's so practical. And I love how you just, opened up yourself and made yourself vulnerable and made yourself transparent throughout your journey. So thank you so much. And thank your husband for that. Now, Allison, is there a way that we can keep up with you? Emails, Twitter handle?
Yeah. My Twitter handle is Allyvest, ALLYVEST @Allyvest. And my website is AllisonVesterfelt.com. And there is a contact form on my website. So you can email me through that contact form. And I post 4 times a week on that platform as well, so you can check out my writing there. And there are links to lots of different interviews I've done. I did an interview with Donald Miller and Joshua Becker and a few other authors. So lots of great content there if you want to find me there.
And Allison, are there any new projects you want to tell us about?
Well, right now I'm focusing on traveling and speaking for Packing Light and developing content for the website. I have been working on an ebook kind of secretly. I haven't talked about it online at all yet, but that could be coming in the next couple months. And then
Awesome.
I do have an idea for a second full-length book project, but that probably won't come until 2015. So,
final question, Allison. Okay, so I did a little bit of research on you, and I realized that you have some Huffington Post articles out. And there was one that stuck out to me, and it goes by the title of 10 Things I Gave Up to Get Out of Debt. Just one question. Tell me how the heck did you quit the internet and coffee? We spent a full year without internet at our house. And at the time my husband and I were both working from an office, which is how it worked because I do everything online. So now that I work from home, I couldn't go without internet. But it was honestly a really cool exercise. We had to change everything about our habits because we couldn't watch, Netflix from our house. Any of the things that you do when it's, Saturday and you're resting or whatever. So much of what you do involves being on Twitter, being on Facebook, watching Netflix. And so it altered a lot of our habits, but it's in a really positive way. I think it taught us to have conversations with each other. We started playing board games. We'd play cards. We would read books. And it was a really neat way because we really love our work a lot, so we worked a lot of hours. And so we would be at the office working long hours, and then when we would come home, it was this opportunity to power down and to really have rest time. So I couldn't come home and just have to check a few more emails. I would have to come home and, shut down for the night, which I think was a really positive thing. I think we probably slept better. It was good. We went for a full year without internet. It was a great experiment. Well, Allison, you keep me and my wife in your prayers because we don't know if we're going to be able to do that. But it's great. It's great that you were able to sacrifice these things, even the things that were necessary in order to reach your goal and live out your passion and help a lot of people. So what an amazing interview. Now, everyone can find the links, the resources provided, and Allison's contact information at Dario Inspires. Allison, we got so much more than we bargained for, as usual. Thank you so much for your time. We just want to tell you to keep inspiring and keep soaring.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to Waiting on Superheroes with your host, Dario Inspires, the podcast created to call world changers, catalysts, and entrepreneurs to action. We'll see you next time.